So I just remembered this. It's one of those memories that isn't extremely terrifying enough to remember, but it's eerie enough to stay in your mind for a good while. I'd say I was about 13 years old when this happened. At the time, I lived in a small town, and this girl, a few years younger than me, had gone missing. It had been a pretty big deal. They found her dead, and well, she had apparently been tortured before her death. It was a huge deal. Obviously, it made my parents paranoid about who they let be around their children. So, back to my experience. My mom took me to Burger King. It was close to our apartment, and we went there the day she was too tired from working to cook. She went to get the food, and I sat at a booth, playing with the paper from my straw, when this man came in and came up to me. It was like he came into the building, looked around until he spotted me, and then came over to where I was sitting. And the guy, he might have been homeless. I don't know. He had this odd smell to him, and his clothes were ripped and dirty. He kept his hands stuffed in his jeans pockets, and kept moving them around, and swaying back and forth while standing, looking down at me, and he kept smiling, and it was so creepy. I just sort of smiled at him and said hi, and I hoped he'd go away, and figured he couldn't do anything because it was a small building, full of employees, and my mom was just a few feet away. My mom hadn't noticed him yet. So he started talking to me. And I remember, he had this kind of voice that made you feel gross. He just fucking stared at me and was talking about the girl who went missing and was found dead. It wasn't like a casual topic. He had this fucking glint in his eye, like it was exciting to him what had happened, and exciting for him to be talking about it to a young girl. He started on about how he heard that what had happened to this girl was all about sex, which, when you're very young and some creepy man who hasn't bathed in probably weeks is saying things about sex to you, the way he said sex was just so intense and so freaky. Like, the whole situation is fucked, and I was creeped out, and this guy was standing very, very close to me, like blocking my side of the booth. It was like he knew that if he didn't stand nearly pressed to my side, that I would get up and leave this charming conversation. Thankfully, before he could tell me any more about sex, or at this point, asks me if I'd had sex before, which is where he was starting to go with it, my mom noticed him and came over, asking him what the hell he wanted, and why the fuck he was talking to me. He got wide-eyed, jumped up and left. A few employees ran out after him to see who he was and what he looked like, because they wanted to call the cops and make sure they never let him into the building again. I remember being shaken up really badly. My mom was freaked out. She had plans on buying me mace and all sort of things after that incident. The thing is, after that, I was paranoid that I'd run into him again. In a small town, that shit happens. Like, a few times, I swear I saw him riding a bike when I'd be in the car with my mom. And another time, I think I saw him in a shop we were in. Of course, I was young, he was gross, and I was paranoid, so I doubt that I really ever did see him. Anyway, gross guy from Burger King. Let's not meet. So, I was at Burger King, and I forgot to grab my drink in the drive-thru window, and it was too late to reverse. So, I just parked the car in front of the store, close to the entrance, and leave the car on to quickly grab my drink and leave. The only reason I left it on was because my mom was with my baby in the back seat, which is where my mom normally sits to entertain my baby while I drive. My windows in the back are tinted, so you can't really see anyone back there unless you're close up. and it was kind of dark out. I got my drink and went back to my car in less than half a minute, and I see this guy who's close to my driver door, and he quickly turns when he sees me, kind of startled, and he asks if I have any spare change. I tell him sorry I don't, and quickly got into my car. When I pull out, this girl goes up to him, and they're both whispering something and staring at me, like they were up to something. I quickly got this gut-wrenching feeling that his intentions were bad, and if I hadn't been there as quick as I was, he could have taken my car with my mom and baby in the back seat. Maybe he noticed my mom in the back and quickly changed his mind when he got closer. I don't know, but I'm so glad it didn't happen. My mom said she obviously wouldn't have left without the baby, but who knows what this guy was capable of. From then on, I've always locked the car when I left, if my mom decides to stay in while I grab something really quick. So, guy who possibly had bad intentions to take my car with baby and mother in the back seat. Let's not meet. I was working as an assistant manager at a local KFC where I worked for roughly 2 or 3 years. I have some really good memories from this place, as well as some really funny stories. We became severely understaffed at one point, and my general manager at the time left to work for CC's Pizza, another local chain. Because of this, I was left in charge of the store until they found or decided on a replacement for him. After probably 3 months or so, during this time, tensions were high due to our staffing issues, and I was given a raise for holding down the fort and keeping the store open despite most of the employees walking out on me. They finally sent us help. A guy and several of his employees from a store located about 40 minutes away. Some things to understand about this store. It was located in a very wealthy neighborhood and subsequently had very wealthy employees. Anyway, this new manager, Mike, comes in and immediately starts barking orders at everyone. Obviously, no one is listening to him, but when I tell them to do the exact same thing, they get it done. He asks me why they won't listen to him, but will listen to me, and I explain that they aren't here for the money, they're here for the experience. I remind him that they're driving Ferraris to work, and that he needs to be their friend and their boss. In other words, earn their respect and they will respect you. He agrees to let up on them and try it my way instead. He does it, and they listen. Then he turns on me and starts demanding stupid and ridiculous things around the store, most of which are related to late night cleaning, which he knew I couldn't do because I didn't have time with deposits and whatnot. I got pissed off and told him to fuck off. After a few weeks of this and a serious amount of stress, I decided to put in my 2 weeks notice. At this point, I had already started looking for a job elsewhere and had several offers on the table. I took a job about 2 miles up the street at a local Burger King as their general manager. I ended up working a lot of late shifts because they were understaffed for those particular shifts. This was fine, but it also meant closing the front by myself, mopping the storefront, locking the doors, etc., while my cook closed the back of the house. I didn't really pay much attention at first. Hell, it was barely noticeable. But at the same time every night, the same car would park in the front of the lot, facing the store, and just sit there for hours on end. I honestly thought it was kids making out or something at first, but that was clearly not the case. I was always last to leave the store and set the alarm. One night, the second I lock the door behind me and start to head to my car, the engine turns over in the car at the front of the restaurant. It startled me, so I looked over, but all I could see was the headlights, and the car didn't move. I hurried to my vehicle and started to drive away. The second I left the lot, so did the other car. My drive wasn't particularly far from my home, but I had this gut feeling that it would be a bad idea to head there. I started down the very empty 1 a.m. highway and switched into the left lane with this guy still following closely behind me. After a minute or two, at 10 or 15 miles above the speed limit, I decided to switch into the right lane and drastically slow down to see if he'll pass me. The guy also switches over and slows drastically down. Now, I'm not stupid. I know when I'm being followed, and at this point, I'm scared. I grab my almost dead phone and call my husband. I frantically spout off what's going on, and he tells me to drive to the police station, so I start heading in that direction. I don't know if this guy caught on to that or not, but right before we hit the road the station is on, he blows by me at an insane speed and keeps driving. I turned around and went home. Fast forward another week, and I see the same guy sitting out in the parking lot. This time, I called the cops right away at the urging of my cook and assistant manager. The cops showed up and get the guy to come out of the car. It's Mike from my old job. He tells them he wasn't doing anything wrong and developed a crush on me from our time together at our old job and just wanted to say hi. They don't arrest him, but told him to get the fuck out of there. And it put enough fear in him that I haven't seen him since.